Most corporate innovation programs have a startup problem, not a shortage of startups. They have hundreds of those. The problem is they never actually buy anything from them. And that's a problem for the corporation and the startup. They run accelerators, they host hackathons and other type of events. They sign proof of concept agreements that sit in legal for 6 months, sometimes longer. And at the end of the year, they present a slide deck full of pilots to the board and call it innovation. Well, that is not innovation. That is theater. The venture client model is the antidote. And in this video, I'm going to explain exactly what it is, why it works, when everything else fails, and how to start one insight in your company step by step. Let me name the real problem first. Because if you don't understand it, the model will not make sense. So, most large organizations approach startups, in my opinion, the wrong way. They treat startup engagement as a relationship building exercise, and it's not. They want to explore synergies. They want to learn from the ecosystem. So they build elaborate programs with demo days and cohort and innovation labs. And they invest enormous time and money of energy into those programs. And then nothing ships. The reason, in my opinion, is structural. Traditional corporate startup model asks startups to adapt to corporate processes, long procurement cycles, legal reviews, pilot frameworks that were designed for vendors, not for early stage companies. A startup with 12 months of runway cannot wait 9 months to close purchase order. If you're a chief innovation officer, a VP of corporate venturing, or a head of open innovation, and you are sitting on a program that produces activity but not results, this is probably why. And the venture client model flips that logic entirely. So what is the venture client model? The term was coined by Gregor Gimme at BMW Group in 2015. The idea is simple but radical in a corporate context. Instead of investing in startups, partner with them in long exploration phases or running pilots that go nowhere, you buy from them. You become a client, a paying client on a real contract quickly, right away. The corporate becomes a venture client, a large organization that purchases a startup's product or service before that startup is mature, in order to solve a real business problem faster and cheaper than building or buying from traditional vendors. Sounds good, right? That is the whole model. The mechanism is purchase, not partnership. Now, let me break down why this works and how it differs from what most programs are doing. There are many step-by-steps. This is not 1 second magic. But if you follow those steps, I literally assure you, you're going to have success in the program. Point 1, purchase creates accountability on both sides. When you run a pilot with a startup, there's no real skin in the game. Well, maybe sometimes. The corporate does not commit budget. The startup does not commit resources, or just a little bit. Everyone is exploring, and exploring has no deadline. Sometimes it has, but you know the main point. When you become a venture client, there is a contract, there's a statement of work, there is a delivery date. The startup is accountable to perform. You are accountable to pay. That single structural difference changes the entire dynamic of the engagement. And believe me, it changes it all. I saw this firsthand at Wayra. We work with dozens of startups across Latin America. The engagement that actually produced results were the ones where a business unit put real money on the table. The ones framed as exploration almost always died in a committee or in bureaucracy or decision purgatory, or you you name it, but no one takes a decision. And the pilot goes from one desk to another desk. Point 2, it solves real business problems, not innovation problems, real problems. This is the part most people get wrong. Venture client programs do not live in the innovation lab. They live in the business unit because that's where you have the problem. The innovation team's job is to identify the problem, source the startup, and structure the deal. But the problem being solved belongs to operations, to product, to logistic, where the pain is, whatever the area is, but you need to find that pain. When I was at Wayra, Telefónica's corporate venture arm, we learned this lesson over and over. The most successful startup engagements were the ones where a business unit leader said, I have this specific problem. I need solution in 3 months by Q3, Q4. What can you find me? Those engagements moved at a completely different speed than the ones driven by innovation teams or wannabe solutions I want to find. We're looking to startups to work with. The business unit's urgency becomes the program's engine, and that's where the problem is, and that is the best fit is for the business and for the startup. Point 3, speed is the entire value proposition. Large companies can build things, that. Large companies can acquire things. What they cannot do easily is move fast. And you as a startup are 100% faster than them. A startup with a working product in a specific domain can deploy in weeks what a corporate R&D, research and development team, would take 18, 20, 24 months to prototype. The venture client model is essentially arbitrage. You are buying speed and focus expertise at a fraction of the cost of building it yourself. At Smyrna Labs, the company that I found a couple of years ago, when we advise clients on how to set up these programs, the first questions we always ask is, what business outcome do you need to hit in the next 90 days? Because that is the framing story that makes venture client work. Not what startups are interesting to us, but what problem do we need to solve and fast? When you have that clear, then you bring the startup to the table. But remember that is very important. Identify what is the problem you have. Validate if it's a real problem, and then you bring the startups to the table. Here's how you actually start a venture client program inside your organization. 4 steps. Step 1, identify one real business problem. Not a theme, not an exploration area. One specific, measurable problem that a business unit leader owns and is already under pressure to solve. That's very important. The criteria. It must have a clear owner, a timeline, a success metric, and a budget attached. Or budget that can be unlocked if a solution exists. If you cannot find that problem, you are not ready to run a venture client program yet. Find the problem first. That's the step 1. Step 2, source startups that have already solved the problem on step 1. Not startups that are working on something related. Startups with a working product that has been deployed, even at smaller scale, for the specific problems you identify. This is sourcing with surgical precision. You are not running an open call or a demo day. Nothing wrong with that. You are doing targeted research, startup database, ecosystem maps, looking with VCs, going to a specific conference, looking very sharply. You want 2 to 4 candidates maximum, not 24. There's nothing wrong with having a long database. That's not the problem. The problem is when you look without very specific focus. You need that surgical focus. So step 3, run a structured validation sprint. This is the 30 to 60 day phase where you take your 2 to 4 candidates and run a focused time box validation with the business unit. You are not running a free pilot. You are running a paid, structured validation with a defined scope and a go, no-go decision at the end, okay? This is very relevant. Budget for this, even if it's a small payment, 10, 20,000, 30K, changes the nature of the engagement. It signals seriousness. It filters out startups who are not ready to deliver. At the end of the sprint, and this is very important, you have data, a lot of data. The business unit makes the call. You either proceed to a full purchase contract or you move on. You know, that is the main focus. With data and seeing what happens on the field, you're going to be able to take a decision of a go, no go, if it's scale, if the solution goes to another facility, another region, another country that you have operations, doesn't matter. But you need a go, no go solution, a no go decision. And the final step 4, sign a real contract and measure outcomes. A purchase order, a service agreement, something with a delivery obligation, a timeline, and a payment milestone. This is where most programs fail to cross the finish line. They complete the validation, everyone is excited, and then the deal goes into a procurement process, that kills everything sometimes. Don't get me wrong, procurement teams. Your job as the innovation leader is to pre-negotiate the procurement path before the sprint starts. Bring that people to the table at the beginning. Know which legal template you will use. Know which procurement category this falls under. Have finance and legal brief. The path to contract should be engineered before the startup ever walks in the door. Don't bring the procurement team at the end, because it's going to be, a lot of problems if you can solve them. Bring the team at the beginning, so you at least have some paths where to go as with the procurement restrictions. There are always, workarounds on this, but bring it at the beginning, okay? Even if they think they are wasting time, be able to sell them the idea. You need them in terms to be successful with your program. Let me tell you about one engagement that I still think about. When I was working at Wayra, we were working with a major cement company that had CO2 emissions and truck delivery problem. It was an operational problem. The cost of this was super high. The unit leader needed a solution that could be deployed to field teams in under 90 days, around 90 days. We run a targeted sourcing exercise. 3 startups. One had a plug-and-play tool already deployed with big companies in Latin America. The business unit assigned one real operation manager to run the test, not an innovation person, an operations person to see the business and the problem. At day 45, 50, more or less, the numbers were good enough. The unit leader said, I like it. The startup had a contract within months of validation close, and that's the main idea. That is the model working correctly. What made it work was not the innovation team's enthusiasm, which is always good. It was a business problem with a real owner, a startup with a proven product, and a clear decision at the end of the validation. Every element was designed for a fast yes or no. That is what Venture Client is, a system for getting to yes or no as fast as you can. If you're building or rebuilding a corporate innovation program and you want to see what Venture Client looks like in practice, not in theory, subscribe to this channel. I publish one video every week on the frameworks, the failures, and the real decisions behind corporate innovation that actually ships. Not fancy stories, what happened in the real world on the field. And if you want the written version of everything I just covered, frameworks, templates, sourcing checklists, is all in the Venture Edge newsletter. Link is in the description. And so before I finish, one question for the comments. Is your company currently running any form of Venture Client? or it is still stuck in the pilot loop? Tell me exactly where you are. I read every response. Thank you. See you around. Ciao. Adieu.